Welcome back to another week of Connect with Jonathan Mark. We have an amazing episode. I mean, you're going to hear a case that I worked on that is a major case for the FBI, law enforcement communities. Pretty much a lot of people will know about this case. I was brought on, and you will hear the backstory of why, where, when, everything. She hosts a plethora of true crime podcasts. She's a journalist. The podcast name is called There and Gone, South Street. Let's welcome Andrea Gunning to the show. So like you said before, you recognize this back room over here.
I do. I feel like I was just there, but it's been months.
It has been. I want to go there soon and tell people about everything, because I've been getting such great feedback about it. I mean, someone just posted about it just before. This is the first time people saw more so like me in action with a reading, because I've always kept that stuff private, just because when I work on cases, as you know, you have to wait until you get permission, and it could take a year or two for it to go through the courts and just things like that. So I want to hear from your perspective and about the show and everything.
Yeah. Quick question for you. You have to sign an NDA when you work on a case. Do you have to sign something when you get brought in? So is that why you're not allowed to, I imagine you're not allowed to talk about it?
It's a mixture of things. It's of course that's one of the stuff that some cases, like probably higher profile cases, I do, but a lot of the cases I think now I know to not go online and just start sharing the experience. And because from what I've learned is people listen to everything and they watch everything, even when you think that they don't at times. And a lot of times when I work with the feds, detectives, whoever, they tell me that they go through social media stuff and they really make sure any keyword. So it's if I'm working on the Long Island serial killer case, let's say, they'll put keywords in to see if I posted or anyone has posted, just so they can go through and make sure that information that's not going to affect the case is out there to but a lot of the times I just kind of know it's protocol. I don't talk about it, and they know that I know that. So I try to just keep it very private until they start talking about it. Then I feel comfortable.
And it's also a sensitive subject with the families, right? Because they're really looking at law enforcement. And I think that you were telling me that usually when you're brought in, the families don't really see you. You're in different rooms or whatever, and because they could get attached. So it's a really sensitive situation.
Yeah. So when I do this now, I've done a couple in person and stuff, but most of the time now I do it through virtually, where they black my screen out, they change my name and my voice, just because you were saying, they don't want us to develop an attachment to each other. They want me to be very transactional kind of business. So I don't get biased with these stuff that I do, reading. So if I get attached to someone and then I have this bias now because I'm so attached to this person, then then I would be off the case, because then I'm not going to be helpful.
Yeah. What are you? You know what I mean? You got to stay, in the middle. It's interesting when we sent pieces to the families, just to give them a heads up. So for people that don't know, I've been working on a case since 2019. I'm from Philadelphia. It's about two people who went missing in 2005. They were friends. They had dated before. I was a senior in high school when it happened, and it was a few towns over. So I remember it very vividly, because last time they were seen was off of South Street in Philadelphia. And that is a very busy area. It's where there's a ton of bars. Real World had just done Real World Philadelphia. And so every time they would go out, they would go to South Street. That's where nightlife was, especially in the early 2000s. And so for two people to just get plucked off of South Street is it's terrifying if you're a local resident or if you're from the Philadelphia area, because you have a public safety concern. And then very soon after everything, a few days following, it became very clear that it wasn't necessarily a public safety concern. It was more of a personal situation, why these two went missing. And, Philadelphia is a small city, and it's a big city, but it's got a small town feel where everybody knows everybody. And, when we started our podcast division, I work at Glass Entertainment Group. When we first started our podcast division, one of my producers was good family friends with the guy who went missing. His name is Richard. His family, like her brother ended up marrying Richard's cousin because they met at a search party. And so we got introduced to the families. And so this year will mark the 20th anniversary of them going missing. And we produced There and Gone, Sal Street. We worked with the FBI on trying to figure out what happened, because the FBI, with no physical evidence, they need testimony from people, and the FBI is convinced that there are people out there that know something. And we've been working really closely. We thought when we called the FBI just to see if they would sit down for an interview, they would tell us to go pound sand, because it's really hard to get law enforcement to play ball. And instead, we were met with please, we need someone. We need to get this back out there into the public eye, because they went missing in February, and then a few months later, Natalie Holloway went missing. And they had went missing like a few months after Lacey Peterson went missing. So it's just like there was a lot of noise around really big cases at the time. And so the FBI was just really excited for us to take this on. And so we started working with the families we've been working with them for 4 years. And just trying to do our own investigation. And one day I was cooking dinner. I was listening to Call Her Daddy, and I was listening to you on Call Her Daddy. And you were talking about your work with law enforcement, and just through personal connections on in my business, I found someone that may have known you. I was like, I know this person that may know this person, that your manager. And I was like, I need to find Jonathan. I need help, because we kept getting far in our investigation, and then we would hit a roadblock, and then we would go down a different avenue, and then we would run into a roadblock. And so I was just at the point, I need direction. I need insight. Danielle's brother, and I'll stop whatever you want, but this one piece is Danielle's brother. So Danielle and Richard went missing. Danielle has a brother, John, and he described what it was like losing his sister as the equivalent of standing in a snowy field, a vast snowy field with no footprints, no idea what direction to go. And that's how I felt when I reached out to you, was I just needed help finding direction. And we got that. So thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm super thankful I was brought on to help. And you are right. I try to tell people this, and I always say this, I'm the last option, as I should be. I'm never the first. I should be pulled in when you are in that snowy field and you don't know to go left, to go right, to go straight, to go backwards. You just don't know. Mm-hmm. And I felt very thankful to be a part of it, just because it is close to my home too. It's a few hours away. It's really not that far. But mm-hmm. I was... I tried not to share this with people until we did this episode, because I wanted to go into the full thing of everyone kept this a secret from me. My manager, everyone was we're not telling you the name of the case. They're going to come and we're going to see what you can do. And that's exactly how I want it to be for every case, is don't tell me anything, because then if you do, then it's hard not to be wow, they're doing a podcast show on this and it has all this attention on it and has been for years. What's this case? You want the real authentic of where, in what direction any case, and especially this one, was going. So I remember just, you come in, I'm like, shit, I really hope I could pull in.
You were nervous. Yeah, you were nervous.
Always. And I said this before too, in one of my episodes, but I always get anxiety attacks before every reading. Every reading, I get a massive anxiety attack. And when it comes to true crime cases, or just unsolved or missing people or whatever, my anxiety, and it's so weird, I get more calm I don't know how to explain. Like, I get nervous, but I'm still like, I'm calm because I'm like, this is it. Like, this is the show. Like, this is what I need to do. Like, and what I mean by the show is like, I always view it as like, I played college lacrosse and it's like a big playoff game and you're in the fourth quarter. It's tied 10-10. Where are we going? Are you going to get that goal to keep the game moving forward or tie the game up or to take the lead or not? And that's how my mindset, it kind of gets switches into like game mode for me, where I just feel comfortable doing that with like law enforcement.
High pressure.
Yeah. But like when it comes to just readings in general, and yes, that I still was extremely nervous. I do get anxiety attacks because I want to perform well for everyone and I want to do well for everyone. But in that one, I was like, oh my God, like they're driving hours to see me for show, for a huge case. And I know a bunch of FBI people too from like me working and just stuff like that. And I know time is so limited with them when it comes to this stuff, and you have to kind of just get right to the point. And I'm sure you can attest to this too. It's kind of like right to the point. Let's not be around the bush, and then let's keep it moving. Like, let's not drag out like something. So that was all going on in my mind when you came. I was like, I need to make this worth their while.
But you also were communicating that, like, you know, we're not Ben is my producer on the podcast, and he worked on the investigation with me. And it was you guys set very clear expectations. Like, there is a good chance you may not be able to reach anybody or connected with this case because we're not family. You typically read family members, and Ben and I are not, you know, related to them in any way. We've just been working on their case. So I think I totally understood that there was a chance that we would be walking in and you would be tapping into, you know, Aunt Sally or something like that, you know, but we were willing to take that. It didn't matter to us. We were just curious. And I remember when we started, like, Ben has never been through, I mean, I don't think I've had like my tarot cards read. I'm not comparing things, but in terms of like intuitive, like meditation, things like that. But Ben had never experienced it. And I just remember, you know, when you're like getting yelled at by a teacher or a parent and you don't know what to do with your emotions, so you start to giggle. Like, Ben just started giggling because he didn't know. Because out the gate, you're right, you didn't know anything. We didn't share anything. Your manager was really specific about that. I was specific about that. I don't even think he really knew we were coming from Philly.
No, he didn't. He just knew you were coming out of town. He just, like, he didn't know
we were if you
were from like New Jersey, Connecticut. Like, he had no idea, like, in the tri-state area relatively where you were coming from, but knew it was out of town.
Right. And so, you really knew nothing. And just immediately within seconds, you just started. I think I was so surprised at how quickly you connected with Richard and Danielle. I'm interested to see how that experience was for you, because this is not typically this was also abnormal for you. Like, this wasn't your normal reading.
Yeah. So it was different for me, but like I kind of like piece things back a little bit where I'm like, okay, like, how did they come through so strong for you guys? And honestly, it makes sense to me because you've been on this case and you've been dealing with their family so much so that you've been so engulfed in this case that you are part of the case, right? So it's not like, because I get people that reach out to me, they're like, John Benet Ramsey, this, like, and they have no affiliation at all to it, you know? So it's like, sometimes it's like a little difficult to really get into the nitty gritty, you know, details of a case other than like what, you know, majority of people know. But it was very different for me because I completely separated family. So like when people, or when energy comes through, whatever you want to call it, I always separate, right? I always separate, whether it's family and then not family, not blood, friends, people that are kind of separate from the two. And so I immediately went to the non-separate, but a common denominator between you and Ben. So once I saw the common denominator between you and Ben pretty quick and fast on, and then I saw the cause of death, I knew it was them, because I always go, like, I trained myself to go name cause of death pretty back to back, because that's how I'm able to help people figure out who's coming through for certain people when I do readings. And it's so that's kind of how I did it. And once I figured that it was those two and the cause of death, then I was able to kind of just attach myself or the reading to those two and just expand from there, from like what each person was kind of like showing me from different point of views and stuff. And it was really nice because I will say this, they came through with the most love for you and Ben. Like they really truly did. Like they didn't come through just, you know, just to come through. Like there was an attachment to you guys because you're doing them such justice. And I think people should truly know that coming from like a medium's perspective from doing this and stuff. And that's what I tried telling you guys at the end, because it is the truth. Like they came through, from what I remember, with the most love and appreciation for the two of you, because you guys are really bringing such attention to their case when there wasn't so much attention because of outside like stuff, I will say, without getting like too much into it. Like, so it is really awesome from my perspective to see, and I wish people can see what I see in those instances because it is so nice.
I know. I mean, it means a lot to me because I feel really close to them as people, especially, you know, if you listen to the show, it's called There and Gone South Street. And the first few episodes, we really focus on getting to know those people as human beings, because I think a lot of, and you get an understanding of what happened on February 19th, 2005. And each episode, we kind of bring out new information, but it's always important to me that people acknowledge them as the people that they were when they were living, and what the people who are still, you know, for their families that have to live without them, like what they're carrying and who did they remember them as. And we wanted to really honor them. And I feel like I know them as people through this process, and I feel close to them. Like I even like talk to them at times just because, you know, I've spent such a long time trying to figure out what happened to them. And, you know, I just want somebody to come out and share, you know, what they know, because I know for a fact that someone in the city of Philadelphia or even elsewhere knows exactly what happened to them.
Yeah. So. And I do think, and this is from like the outsider like me, I do think someone's going to step forward soon because you are bringing so much attention to it. You are going down different avenues. You're working with current and retired like feds. You're doing pretty much everything you possibly can. And typically what happens is, and again, just from like working on cases, and not all of them obviously, but some of them, the moment you bring attention to a case and it starts to really, which it has been, like getting traction and you're going to different people and someone gets scared and whether they were involved or saw something or were there that night that maybe didn't want to speak up or whatever the case is, someone typically will send in an anonymous tip or will, you know, just do stuff like that. And I do believe something will happen because you guys are doing such a good job, like hitting every angle. And, you know, I do wish that the family gets closure. Like that's the biggest thing, is the closure side of things. I just want everyone to get it because it's, in these instances, it's very fragile and difficult. I will tell you, like 100%.
Yeah, it's always hard to know. I mean, they don't have somewhere to go to like memorialize, you know. Some people can go and they have an urn and they feel like they're always with them, or they can go and spread ashes and have that experience, or they can go to a grave site and have that. These people don't. And that's really, really tough. I'm not doing trauma comparison, but that's really difficult to not have a place where you can put them. And it's, you know, that idea of what is it to be missing is such a, it's a mind fuck, you know?
Oh my God.
It's so crazy. I so badly wish we could look in the water, and, you know, there's a company called Adventures with Purpose that has done dives for this case, and they do it on YouTube. But I don't think, it's so weird when we sat down, we had been thinking about, I don't know if the car's in the water or not. Basically, Richard had driven him and Danielle to South Street, and they left the bar and then were never seen again. And so the two bodies are missing, and so is Richard's 3,000-pound pickup truck, which you nailed completely. I think that's when Ben started laughing, because he was just like, you're like, it's a gray or black, a black truck. And I'm like, how does he know this? And, there is theories that it could be in the water, but, and there's specific areas that I particularly want to search just from my own investigation. And so when you brought up, you're looking in the wrong place, I would love to figure out a way to like team up with someone to do a dive, because diving is hard. Like, it's really, you have to know exactly where you want to go, especially with a body of water that large. You kept saying it separates, it's like a state line. The Delaware River separates Philly, Pennsylvania from New Jersey. Like, you totally nailed that. And that's where it could be. It could be in a river estuary that runs into the Delaware River. And so there are places that I really want to search, and that would be it really motivated me and Ben to like circle back and be like, I wonder if we can figure out something to justify another search. I hope so.
There's like this, I scroll through TikTok. I'll just be sitting on my couch and just, popping through. And there's this account, and I forgot the account name, but they do this. They go and you watch them dive, and then they call the family and they're like, hey, we found the car, we found them, and they were missing for 10 years. And they do this. I forgot what the account is. I always like
Adventures with Purpose.
It might be, because it gets super emotional and I like can't deal with it. I'm like,
it's really intense.
Yeah, I'm like, I deal with murder every day. I do this, but like when it comes to that stuff, I cannot deal with it. Like that's my breaking point. I'm like, hearing the family is like, that's my breaking point. Like, I can't do it. Like even with a case that I just recently was on, I helped them to turn a case from a suicide to a murder. So,
wow.
Yeah. So once I got the email from the mom and the DA and all these people.
Is this Ellen Greenberg?
No.
Okay.
This is a young, he was a young boy. Well, not young. He was in his like early 20s, mid 20s. And it was really intense, because basically I spoke about this case, actually, I think in one of my episodes at the end, but I got called on and I basically point them in a direction. Just long story short, there's a lot of like police corruption. There was a lot of stuff that was going on, and which is like, unfortunately, like very common in like a lot of different places, and especially in small towns. There's a lot of different like corruption and stuff. But long story short, basically I said to them, because they pronounced him a suicide from drugs and stuff like that, and I was like, this kid looks like a all-American kid. Like, he doesn't look like he does that stuff. And I'm like, he keeps going like this and like showing like someone strangled him. But the like crazy part is like, because a law enforcement person was a part of this case, like on the not good side, I will tell people, on like not the protecting and serving side, he kind of pushed through like a bunch of like, he pushed through like the cremation very fast. Like, he did things that were like super weird, and they were able to get from another law enforcement person pictures of the scene, and you could see on the body there's bruises of like of someone strangling them. So with like a bunch of different stuff, and then me saying it was a couple people that were there and where he worked and stuff like that, they were able to turn it from a suicide to a murder, which is like, just so people know, that's a really big deal. That's like a huge deal, because now they have to investigate this case like a murder case. They can't just like rule it as a suicide, and now there's foul play. So to me, that like when I heard and the person called me and in the family and they were getting emotional, I was like, I gotta hang up. I'm like, I don't want to be mean or anything. I'm like, I'm so happy, but I'm like, you're gonna get me emotional. I'm like, I need to like not get emotional. Like, I have to be like strong here. Like, like crazy. It was just crazy. And it was a very because like sometimes I don't hear about what I did in the case until like 6-8 months later, or even longer, because takes time to investigate. It doesn't like, they're not going to take what I say and then tomorrow go and look. Like, that's typically
You're passing a baton.
Exactly.
You know, and you don't know where that baton's going to go because it's up to the person that's taking it to run with it.
Exactly. So like, that's why, like, for people that like, I think sometimes people don't really understand that, where when they come to me, I think people think it's an immediate follow-up after to like all the stuff I said to rule things out or whatever. And it's not like that. It's like you said, it's like a baton. Like, you have to go from one person to the next, to the next, to the next, get permission, get this, get a warrant, get search warrants, get this, get that. And it's pretty difficult. So I just want people to know like that. But like those experiences, like I was saying from TikTok, and when someone calls you about that, I'm like, I can deal with this, this, and this. And, you know, I'm able to go in and do this. And then that happens. Real life stuff happens like that. And then I'm like, I'm going to cry. I'm like, I can't do this. Like,
even though you kind of live it almost every day, but
yeah. Literally.
Yeah. I had no idea it was so hard for a suicide to be overturned to be determined a homicide. We're dealing with that in Philadelphia, where there was a school teacher who it was a snowstorm. She had left work early, and she was found dead in her apartment. Her boyfriend had left to go to the gym for a little bit and then came back, and the door was locked, and she was stabbed. Oh man, I could be making up this number, but like over 20 times, maybe around that.
Oh, I heard about this.
Yeah, and the family's working really, I mean, where she passed away is really close to our office. Like, it's in our office backyard. It's so close to where we work. And it was a big case in Philadelphia. And the family's working really, really, really hard to get it overturned. I mean, it's kind of hard to conceive that someone would be capable of inflicting that much trauma on themselves. Yeah. But they're getting completely shut down.
Well, I'm here to help. If they want anything, I'm here to help. I'm out here saying this. I'm here to help. Reach out. I will do it for you. No questions. Just send an email and I'm ready to go.
Yeah. Well, once I have a link, we were messaging with her. I think her family's really busy trying to work on this case, but I'll tell my producer, Carrie, to we're not working with them. That's just they're working with another production company. But yeah, it's a really horrible story, and I just had no idea that it would take so long. Mm-hmm. And it just goes back to, you know, actually, I have a question for you. When you were listening to your interview on the podcast, you're on episode 9, I believe, or episode 9 or 8. Was that hard to listen to? Like, were you nervous, or like, how was that experience for you, and what we chose from what you were seeing? Because obviously there was the experience we had in your house and all the information that was coming from you. What was it like hearing what we distilled down among the whole show?
It was a interesting thing to see what was chosen, obviously, because you never know when you do this stuff, like what's going to be kind of plucked out into like the grand scheme of things. I think it was good because, like I was saying to you, like earlier on into the episode, people really got to see how I do things in real time, and with like with the reading, and see how sometimes things are difficult to say or things like that, because it's sometimes not as easy. But it was kind of like, I always say, like, I hate hearing myself back, just like in like anything.
It never gets easier. I hate my voice.
Yeah, I absolutely hate it. So I was like, oh my God. But I did like to hear, because when it comes to doing these readings for like Unsolved or whatever, I will take kind of what I hear from whatever the police or you guys or whoever, and what they focus on, because then that means there's a common thread of like what they want to hear versus what is nonsense to them, I guess, at times, because I don't want to waste anyone's time. And I've learned, like, again, with like law enforcement stuff, you really do have such a short window of time with them to like really make a difference. So it was interesting. And like I said, I'm extremely thankful to be brought on to help. And, you know, I'm happy people could hear, and it's been such good response. I really have to say, like,
I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah, someone just
happy to hear that.
Yeah, someone just posted about. I mean, people have been posting about it all the time, but someone posted about it just recently, and it's really nice to like see that people are receptive to someone like myself, like a medium or, you know, whatever, to work on a case or something.
Totally. There were a few moments that, and we obviously won't disclose what was discussed, that we went off the record when we didn't want to record information, you didn't feel comfortable. And then even still, there were moments that we had to not include because of legal reasons, because of people or things being identifiable. And that was a tough one to also navigate because, you know, we want to be able to include everything in a non-edited fashion, but there were things that we had to exclude because you were so dead on about a lot of things. And I think what was really interesting was, we touched base with the families multiple times during an episode process. I correspond with one family, Ben corresponds with the other, and Richard's cousin, you know, the information was the information, but what really struck her was the words that you were using. Like, you were like basically quoting what Richard was saying to you, and she was like, he would say that to me in those words, like how he was speaking to you and then how you would say it back. She's like, that's him. Like that's how he would talk. And you know, facts are things that are out there, but how you would know someone personally and their personality to convey their personality in that way really was striking to the families, which was really cool. And Danielle's family, they couldn't stop listening to it. Like, that really, really, really moved them. And even to the point where, like, I think I woke up to an early morning text message from Danielle's sister-in-law, and she was like, did he know anything about the... I was like, I swear to you, like, he knew nothing.
That's a good compliment. Thank you. That's huge. And I really do truly like appreciate that. Like, when I do these readings, really intimate things do come up upon a case, and you can't share everything. There's no way you can, because you are going to out people. You are going to say stuff, and then the public is the public, and people will latch on to that, and then it starts to go a little crazy. It stops an investigation. It screws up an investigation. There's so many things that there's like a lot of moving parts that I don't think people get when it comes to that. And, then you have the people that, will send like threats to you, being like, don't say this person's name, don't do this. And I wanted to ask you, have you received anything like that from working on these cases, where like people like stop investigating, you're getting too close, like you're stepping on my toes, like from like obviously an anonymous person, I would presume?
I've been really lucky. During the course of working on this specific project, because I obviously have a number of different shows that I host, but it's very different than this. This is my first homicide investigation. I keep a really low profile on like social media, and I started that a few years ago. Like, I deleted everything, kind of started from scratch, which, in our industry is like, people are like, why aren't you putting yourself out there more? And part of the reason was because out of, to be honest, fear on working on this show, specifically because I'm working on investigating a double homicide in the city that I live in. And when it started becoming apparent that there was a particular neighborhood where there was a lot of information that, like, the case is kind of closed. I say that with quotations, in terms of like who may have carried out the murder in one particular neighborhood. I was living in that neighborhood. I had lived in that neighborhood for 12 years. I owned a home, and I decided, I'm selling my house. I'm getting out of here. I hadn't gotten any threats. And I think it's because I kind of kept a low profile, but I was still fearful of, and I still am to some degree, that is a very much a reality that could happen for me, just because it's a small town and a lot of people know a lot of things about what happened, and they're protecting their own. I think you said it really well in this particular case, where it's like, these people have these individuals protecting this person. There's people protecting like this. this circle is protecting their own, this circle is protecting their own. And in one part of the case, that circle of protecting their own was the neighborhood in which I lived. And I was like, I got to get out of here. I don't feel comfortable. And I'm not saying that's not a great area and an incredible place to live, because it is. And I was sad to leave it, but it just had run its course. And I just felt like it was hard. This is actually how I feel. It was hard for me to know that my neighbor could know something. And I just needed a change of scenery. Not saying my neighbor did, but I'm just like being hyperbolic. It was just a weird feeling at the time.
You know what's funny is like you're investigating, the stuff that's going on in your town with the Richard and Danielle like case, and then like I've been so involved with the Long Island serial killer case, and I've been seeing like the Lacey Peterson, like so many different cases that and I'm not a part of the Lacey Peterson case for everyone, so I don't want to take credit because I was not part of it, but I'm just starting to see that like in every neighborhood, no matter where you're from, big, small, or whatever, people protect their own. And that's what I'm learning from working on these like huge cases and just reading about cases, because you're like you're telling me that this person didn't know this, like that's kind of wonky and crazy, and just from like a logical perspective. And it's just kind of crazy to me, because it's like the Long Island serial killer case has been ongoing for like obviously a pretty long time. And it's the same thing. It's kind of like, just so people know this, I'm pretty sure like my dad has a picture when I was a kid. My grandfather lived 2 or 3 houses away from the suspect, or, Rex Hewerman, right? And
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So there's a picture of me and my brother, I'm pretty sure, where we would go to my grandfather's house. And we would, my grandfather would take all the leaves, put it in a big pile. We would run and jump in, whatever. And there's a picture of us, and you see in the background that disgusting red house. That's Rex's house. Like you see it, and because Rex's father owned that house, so it was like he bought the house from his father and whatever. So it's kind of weird, because when I got pulled onto that case from people and stuff, and then as it's going on, my parents brought to my attention that my grandfather lived like 3 houses away. And there's a picture, and you can see it in the background. It's like super crazy.
When you were working on that case, and maybe you can't answer this, but when you were working on it and you were talking to family members of some of the women that passed on, were you seeing that photo? Like, how were they speaking to you, or how were they communicating with you? Because do you see visions, or do you see objects, or initial, like what are the things that you're seeing?
So I basically will see stuff like a Pictionary, right? Like in my head. So if you ever need a Pictionary partner, I always say this to people because it's the truth. I'm your guy, but they basically will put like images in my head. So it originally started when I would stare off, and it would kind of like morph on the wall for like images. Then that went in my head, and then it went to like screenshots in my head. So for example, when I saw Richard and I knew the name Richard, it's because I have an uncle with that name, and they kept flashing that uncle. So I knew the name was Richard. And then like that's kind of how they will do stuff for me. But when it came to that, that's actually not how I was able to get that person. I could share it. So basically, when I was called, without giving like way too much context, because obviously it's still ongoing and stuff, one of the lead agents called me, and I had literally 5 or 7 minutes. Like they called me when I was eating dinner at the table you were sitting at to record with my family. I got the phone call. And
then you had to just get up and leave.
I had to get up and leave because they wanted to throw me like for a loop. Like they didn't want me to know when they were calling. They didn't want me to know anything. It was like a random number with a random area code, so I wouldn't be able to track, be like, this is a New York number. It was like super random. So I get the call. The guy says his name, his credentials, whatever. And then he's like, do you have 5 to 7 minutes? And I was like, yes. And I got up and I just walked into the other room. And basically what I saw was an unusual R name. But what was weird is at the like I'm a New York Jets fan, unfortunately, and one of the coaches has,
well, it could be a good year for you, Jonathan. There's still hope. Let's hope your quarterback doesn't get injured.
Right. But basically, they put one of the old coaches in front of me, and it was Rex Ryan.
Wow.
So that's how they were able to relate that name for me. But I didn't even say the name like that because I kept saying it's an unusual R name. And I didn't even know, because I didn't even know Rex was a real name. If I'm being honest with you, I always thought that was like a nickname. Like
a nickname.
I did not think it was like an actual name for someone. So I kept saying like an unusual R name. Then obviously during the time, stuff happened within the department. So they completely stopped the investigation until a new DA came in and things were settled. And then that's when things like spiked back up with the investigation. And that's when they were able to kind of find out, like, and people know the story, like from like the public's perspective of like the DNA thing and the pizza box and the
pizza outside the work.
Yeah. Like, and like all, like people know that story, but they don't even know the stuff that like kind of like led up to it. And they don't know that they knew about him for quite some time, like really quite some time. It was just finding the proper DNA and stuff like that to like match it to be a 100%. Because in this day and age, if there's a slight 2% that's not there, then it's a no-go. Like, it's like you should not do it unless you are 100% in, like, knowing this. And plus, when it comes to kind of like your point about like Richard's case and stuff, there was people protecting people. Like in so many different ways. There's people protecting people, and there's things that were going on way obviously before. And the craziest part is, I think like we're in September, so a couple months ago maybe, or less than like a couple months ago, they just attached like 2 more bodies to him, like just so people can get like a pretty big understanding of this. Like they are going to attach a lot more is what I'm going to say, because they are suspecting, and whether this public or not, it's not going to like interfere with like a case, I don't think. But from cases from like the 70s, 80s, like stuff like that, like bodies, yeah, it's a pretty crazy case. And again, it goes to the corruption side too of stuff, which is
the craziest part about the experience that we had with you is that Ben had kind of been pursuing one lead for a little while, and I had been working on Betrayal, which is my other podcast, and he was working on one lead for a while, and it involved a different homicide, and they're connected, and if you listen to the show, you'll see how they're connected, but it involves some corruption with, some police, some LNI, which is License and Inspections. It's a department in Philadelphia, and he was filling me in a little bit on what he was learning on working in that angle on our way to you. And we hadn't really unpacked a lot that morning. We were just kind of covering a lot of different things and just chit-chatting. He was like, I have so much to fill you in on. And then as we were wrapping up our reading, you were like, listen, the biggest thing that these two want you to focus on is corruption. Like, the corruption piece. And we had just, like, it wasn't even a thought in our brain until we were on our way to you. And then we leave your house and we're like, we have to pursue. It was just it was kismet almost. It was just this thing, just the stars aligned where he's kind of thinking, I've learned about this. I don't really know if this means anything. And then we sit down with you and you kind of just validate that we need to look into it more. It was wild. Absolutely wild.
There are so many other cases that like, and I'm thankful that people trusted me to do it. So I get like inundated with cases now. Like I have been before, but it's like crazy. Like people now, I think they know me more as like true crime than anything else. Like everyone just.
Are you good with that? Are you comfortable with that?
It's funny you say that, but I think I am. Yeah. If that's how I'm helping people and that's what I'm doing, then I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to be that person, but I do help other people with like, other things and other stuff. But I think people always lean on me for unsolved. Like that's like their thing. It's like unsolved is like my, I always, people used to say out when I would talk to you about the agency stuff, like people would say like there's someone who does celebrity like on TV, and then there's someone like this, and they're like, this is your thing. Like everyone knows you for that. Like that's like your thing. And I try to tell people like, yes, like maybe that is my thing. However, I do, everything. I don't want people just to think, if you don't have an unsolved case, you can't speak to me or whoever. Like, it's just, I guess I have success in it. I guess I do okay in it. So it's like, that's kind of where I go towards, like, just to help like law enforcement and families, because that's, it's tough. It's so freaking tough. So I try to bring, and as you saw when I did the reading, I always try to go closure first and then stuff with the case, like, or vice versa. Like I never want it to be just straight like pow, 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 and then not like make them feel like their loved ones are happy and okay. Like that would be crazy to me. So when I'm able to do it, I always bring the families back like after the case and stuff and give them a free reading. Like that has nothing to do with the case, it has everything to do with happy and positive. And it just works well for me with my process with it. So like I always try to stick with that because I can see it works well. Like the families trust me more. They build more of a connection with me and stuff. So yeah.
That makes sense. Like you're meeting them in a really desperate, scary, stressful time. And then on the other side of it, you're giving them the opportunity to have more of a peaceful experience with what you can do.
Right.
And that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me.
I always try just to like, just do the right thing. But I know we're coming to an end. I would love to give you a quick reading that's not...
Oh, I would love that.
That's not true crime related. That's That's more positive, right? Like...
Yes. Yeah.
Talk about murder all the time, it's a little...
I know. That's my life is murder. Yeah. My mom's like, can you work on something happy? I'm like, it's not the podcast. Nope. But sure, nope. I would love a reading, Jonathan.
Sure. So you know how I do things. I always look off and I always like, you don't even need me to explain. You've experienced it. So
I've experienced it.
Who's George?
My grandfather.
Is this on your father's side?
Yeah.
I have to ask you this because he's who has a family business? Was he part of a family business? He keeps like going up about it because it's funny you bring up that you sold your home. He keeps putting for sale signs and keeps talking. Like, I don't know if he was in, whether it's like reconstruction or just like real estate or whatever, but he keeps flipping for sale signs for me and keeps smiling and saying that it's like from him to someone, like it just keeps going down like a family line. He's also talking about who's Mike.
My parents own an estate sale company.
Okay.
So they do like when people are moving and they don't want to like, this happens in New York or Philly and they're, I'm moving to Florida, but I got to get rid of all of my stuff. My parents will come in, they'll organize everything. People can come and buy stuff and then they'll send it to auction what's left.
Oh, okay.
So it's like...
Okay. Because he keeps smiling, saying it's just from him to down to down.
Yeah, my dad got into it because my grandfather taught him about antiques and...
Okay. But he's saying someone your age group does it too. Or someone in your age group. Who's the F name?
Francesca, my mom, my twin sister.
He's also saying this, so I wanted to ask you... people that are like super involved in a community and stuff where they could walk anywhere and people will know them because they are like a community person or something. Mm-hmm. He keeps smiling to me saying he was a part of like a community, but like pretty into the community, whether he was involved in town stuff, board stuff, whatever. And he's extremely proud of that, like very, very proud of that. And he's just a happy person, and he keeps talking about how much he misses everyone and just how important, and he's joking, saying like how important he was, and I'm sure it's joking but also serious too, it's just how important he was to this town that he was in, because he keeps talking to me about that he was literally a part of so many different things. And again, I don't know if he's like joking around about like him being like in the library or whatever the case is, but he keeps putting books in front of me saying like he really was a part of like pretty much everything. So I think it's very cool, and he's just very happy, and he's, wanted to give you a kind of a quick reading so you can see what it's about on
That's crazy. I wasn't expecting him to come through at all. I was not.
That's my favorite.
We have a tenuous relationship, so that's interesting.
He is a old school type of guy, I will say. And being an old school type of guy can obviously conflict with some stuff because he's saying that your father is doing him proud. And he's basically trying to say also that, like, you know, sometimes friction, like you can have friction and still love someone. And that's what he's talking about, because he's saying that, I guess your father's, like, in a sense to you and your family is nothing like him. So that's why he's so happy. And he's saying, like, friction, like, even though there is friction, he still loves, like, everyone. And, you know, I just wanted to, like, show the positive side of him. So
no, I that's really sweet. I actually really appreciate that, because I think I'm hard on him outside of his passing, and it's actually nice to feel close to him right now.
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
Thank you.
No, thank you. And thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for letting me come on your show. It's been amazing. Thank you.
I feel like we're going to do probably another season, and if there's anything that requires your skill set, I know where to find you. So my podcast is There and Gone South Street. We produced it with iHeart. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts.
Andrea, thank you so much for coming on. What an amazing episode. Guys, thank you so much for listening to Connect with Jonathan Mark. Now, if you want to be a listener reading, it is so easy. All you have to do is just follow my Instagram at Jonathan Mark Medium and send me a DM. I'm telling you guys, it is the easiest thing. You're going to want to do it. Everyone has such a good experience. I have such a good experience. It's so much fun. I love meeting new people. Please, guys, do it. It's amazing. But before I let you guys go, please go rate, review, and follow Connect at Jonathan Mark on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. I will see you next week.